You won't believe this, but my stepdad moved his spoiled daughter into my home and kicked me out like I was a stranger. You won't believe this, but my stepdad moved his spoiled daughter into my home and kicked me out like I was a stranger. I had been away for a few days, visiting a friend in another city. Everything seemed fine before I left. No warning signs, no indication that something was about to go horribly wrong. But the moment I got back, I knew something was off. My key didn't work. At first, I thought maybe I had the wrong one. But after trying again and again, I realized I was locked out. Confused, I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked harder. Finally, I heard footsteps inside. When the door opened, it wasn't my stepdad standing there. It was his daughter. She looked at me like I was a complete stranger and said, "What are you doing here?" "What do you mean, what am I doing here? This is my house." Or at least it was. You won't believe this, but my stepdad moved his spoiled daughter into my home and kicked me out like I was a stranger. I had been away for a few days, visiting a friend in another city. Everything seemed fine before I left. No warning signs, no indication that something was about to go horribly wrong. But the moment I got back, I knew something was off. Locked out of my own home. My key didn't work. At first, I thought maybe I had the wrong one. But after trying again and again, I realized I was locked out. Confused, I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked harder. Finally, I heard footsteps inside. When the door opened, it wasn't my stepdad standing there. It was his daughter. She looked at me with a mix of confusion and annoyance and said, "What are you doing here?" "What do you mean, what am I doing here? This is my house." Or at least it was. The shocking truth. I tried to push past her, but she blocked the doorway. "Dad said this is our house now," she said casually, as if she hadn't just turned my world upside down. My jaw dropped. "Excuse me? What do you mean your house?" She rolled her eyes. "Dad said you were moving out, so we moved in. We needed the space." I could feel my blood boiling. My stepdad hadn't even bothered to call me, to ask, to warn me. He just decided I was no longer welcome in my own home. Calling for backup. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. She was just as shocked as I was. "That's ridiculous," she shouted through the speaker. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not let them push you out." While I was waiting, my stepdad finally showed up. He acted completely indifferent, like locking me out of my own home was no big deal. "You should have called before coming back," he said with a shrug. "We assumed you were staying with friends." The final showdown. By the time my mom arrived, she was furious. She stormed up to my stepdad, demanding an explanation. At first, he tried to brush her off, but she wasn't having it. "This is not your house," she snapped. "You don't get to kick my child out." In the end, after a heated argument, we called the police. And guess what? They sided with me. My stepdad and his entitled daughter were forced to leave. And I got my house back. But I learned my lesson. Never trust people who think they can take advantage of you. After the police left, as soon as my stepdad and his spoiled daughter were forced out, I locked the doors and took a deep breath. The house was mine again, but the damage was already done. When I walked inside, my stomach dropped. They had completely trashed the place. Clothes were everywhere. Food stains covered my couch. And they had even rearranged the furniture to fit her preferences. My bedroom? It was hers now. My bed, my postage, my things, hune. Instead, her stuff was all over the place like she had lived here for years. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't just about them moving in. It was about erasing me from my own home. Taking back what's mine. I immediately started looking for my things. Some of them were stuffed into trash bags in the garage. Others, just missing. When I confronted my stepdad about it later, he shrugged and said, "Maybe she threw some stuff away. She needed space." I said she needed space. In my house. At that point, I was done being polite. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that if anything of mine was missing or damaged, I'd be pressing charges. He laughed at first, but when I actually called my lawyer, his tone completely changed. Suddenly he was apologetic. "It was just a misunderstanding," he said. "Let's not make this a big deal." The final blow. But I wasn't backing down. I went through everything, made a list of the missing items, and guess what? Some of my stuff was at a pawn shop. Yep. His daughter had sold my things to make room for hers. I confronted her, and she acted like I was being dramatic. It's just old stuff, she sneered. You can buy new things. That was the last straw. I filed a police report for stolen property, and the moment she realized I wasn't bluffing, she started crying, saying it was all a mistake. Too late. The aftermath. In the end, my stepdad and his daughter had to pay for everything. They were forced to return the stolen items. And after that, I cut them off completely. My mom was furious at him, too. And after this whole mess, she finally saw what kind of person he really was. Not long after she left him. And honestly, I've never been happier. They thought they could just walk all over me. But in the end I won. Moving on, but not forgetting. Even though I had won the battle, the whole situation left a bitter taste in my mouth. It wasn't just about losing my things. It was about betrayal. My stepdad, someone who was supposed to be family, had treated me like I was disposable. And his daughter? She acted entitled to everything I had worked for. Like I was just an inconvenience in her fairy tale world. For the first few weeks, I kept finding little reminders of their time in my home. A perfume bottle in the bathroom. A pink hoodie left on the couch. Even some of my own clothes, which she had apparently tried to claim as hers. Each time I found something, I felt a fresh wave of anger. A knock at the door. Then about a month later, something happened that I didn't expect. I was finally settling back into my routine when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was my stepdad. He looked different. Tired. Almost defeated. I need to talk, he said, shifting awkwardly. Can I come in? Hell no. I crossed my arms and didn't budge. What do you want? He sighed. Look, I know we didn't handle things the right way. Didn't handle things the right way? That was the understatement of the century. His pathetic excuse. He went on about how he had been under a lot of stress, how his daughter had nowhere else to go, how he thought I wouldn't mind sharing my space. I almost laughed in his face. You locked me out of my own home, and let your daughter pawn off my things. I shot back. How exactly was I supposed to not mind that? He had no real answer. Just more excuses. I didn't think it would go that far, he mumbled. I was trying to help her. Oh, so helping her meant screwing me over? Got it. The final goodbye. Then came the real reason he was here. She's in trouble, he admitted. She got into some financial issues. And I was wondering if you could. I slammed the door in his face. After everything they did, they actually thought I'd help them? No. They made their choices. Now they had to live with them. Karma always wins. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual friend that his daughter had maxed out his credit cards and left him drowning in debt. He had to sell his car, and last I heard, he was couch surfing at a buddy's place. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My house was mine again. My peace was restored. And I had learned a valuable lesson. Police car light never let entitled people take advantage of you. I wasn't just locked out of my home. I was locked out of their toxic drama. And honestly, I've never felt more free. The last attempt. A few months had passed, and life was finally peaceful. No unexpected drama. No entitled people trying to take over my home. Just me, enjoying the space that was rightfully mine. Then one evening, as I was relaxing on my couch, scrolling through my phone, there was another knock at the door. At first I thought it was a delivery, but when I checked the peephole, my stomach twisted. It was her. My stepdad's daughter. The same spoiled brat who had treated my home like her personal playground, stolen my things, and expected me to just roll over and accept it. I considered ignoring her, but curiosity got the best of me. I opened the door, keeping my foot against it just in case. She looked different, disheveled, makeup smudged, and eyes filled with something I never thought I'd see from her. Desperation. Have so bestardy. Hey, she started, her voice much softer than I remembered. I know I messed up. No kidding. I said nothing, just raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to get to the point. She let out a shaky sigh. Look, I don't have anywhere to go. Dad can't help me, and Mom won't take me back. I just need a place to stay for a little while. Just until I get back on my feet. I almost laughed. The audacity. This girl had locked me out of my own home, stolen and sold my belongings, and acted like she was the queen of my house. And now she expected me to save her? The perfect response. I leaned against the doorframe, pretending to think. So, let me get this straight, I said. You took my home, treated me like garbage, stole from me, and now you want my help. She swallowed hard, nodding. I know I don't deserve it, but I have nowhere else to go. I gave her the same look she had given me months ago when she stood in my doorway, blocking me from entering my own house. Yeah, that's not my problem. And with that, I shut the door in her face. The sweetest karma. I watched through the peephole as she just stood there for a few seconds, probably shocked that I had actually rejected her. Then defeated, she turned and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw her. As for my stepdad, he never tried to reach out again. Probably too ashamed. Or maybe he finally realized that when you treat people like trash, eventually, karma comes knocking. And let me tell you, watching her walk away, knowing she had to deal with the consequences of her own actions, that was the best feeling in the world. Desperation turns to revenge. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But some people don't know when to quit. A week after shutting the door in her face, I came home late one night and immediately felt that something was off. My gut told me to check the house before getting comfortable. So I walked around, inspecting everything. That's when I saw it. The back window was unlocked. A chill ran down my spine. I knew I hadn't left it that way. Caught in the act, I grabbed a heavy flashlight and crept through the house, my heart pounding. As I reached the hallway, I heard movement in my bedroom. Someone was inside. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. And there she was. My stepdad's entitled daughter. She was rummaging through my drawers, stuffing things into a bag like she had every right to be there. The moment she saw me, her eyes widened in panic. But then, get this, she tried to play it off. Oh, you scared me, she said, forcing a laugh. I was just getting my stuff. Her stuff? In my house. Calling the cops. You mean stealing my stuff? I snapped, pulling out my phone. She went pale as I dialed 911 right in front of her. Wait. No, don't do that, she begged, dropping the bag. I just needed some money. I didn't mean. I was done listening. She had her chance to walk away with some dignity, but she just couldn't help herself. Now she was going to deal with the real consequences. The final nail in the coffin. When the cops arrived, she actually tried to play the victim, saying I had promised to help her, and that this was all a misunderstanding. But the officers took one look at my ransacked room, my missing valuables in her bag, and the fact that she broke in, and they weren't buying it. She was arrested on the spot. I later found out that this wasn't her first time getting caught stealing. Apparently, she had pulled similar stunts before, but her dad always bailed her out. Not this time. I refused to drop the charges. And because she had a record, she actually ended up serving time. Peace at last. After that, I never heard from her or my stepdad again. My house was mine once and for all. No more drama. No more entitled people trying to take advantage of me. Just me, enjoying my well-earned peace. And honestly, it never felt better. The aftermath. Where is she now? A couple of years passed and life moved on. I had finally put that whole mess behind me. Until one day, out of pure curiosity, I decided to look her up. And what I found? Absolutely priceless. Turns out prison didn't change her. After serving time for breaking into my house, she got out and immediately went back to her old ways. She scammed a couple of friends out of money, maxed out someone else's credit card, and wait for it, got arrested again. Rock bottom. This time though, no one bailed her out. Her dad? Broke and done with her. Her mom? Didn't want anything to do with her. Her friends? All turned their backs on her. She had officially burned every bridge. And the best part? She ended up homeless for a while. Now before you say that's too harsh, let's not forget. She literally stole from me, broke into my house, and tried to manipulate everyone around her. Karma didn't just tap her on the shoulder. It ran her over. Meanwhile me? Winning. While she was spiraling, I was thriving. I got a better job. I upgraded my house. I surrounded myself with real friends and good people. I built a life that was completely out of her reach. The final encounter. The last I ever saw of her? I was out with some friends when I spotted a familiar figure sitting outside a coffee shop. Her. She looked rough. Messy hair, worn out clothes, staring blankly at the street like she had nothing left. For a moment she saw me too. Our eyes met. And in that split second, I could see it all. The regret, the realization, the fact that she knew she had lost. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. I just walked away knowing I had won. Moral of the story? Police car like karma always comes full circle. Mess around with people who have done nothing to you. Take advantage of their kindness, and eventually, life will make you pay for it. And when it does, there's no coming back. The ultimate price. Time passed and I barely thought about her anymore. My life was peaceful, successful, and free of drama. That entire nightmare felt like a bad dream that I had finally woken up from. Until one day the past came knocking one last time. An unexpected message. It started with a simple notification on my phone. A message request from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was her. Hey, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I really need help. I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. But curiosity won. Why are you messaging me? I typed back. Her reply came fast. I have nowhere to go. I messed up again and I don't know what to do. Please, I just need a chance. I could practically hear the desperation in her words. The same girl who once locked me out of my own home, who laughed in my face when she stole from me, was now begging me for help. Final meeting. Part of me wanted to ignore her, block her and move on. But another part of me, maybe the part that wanted closure, decided to hear her out. I agreed to meet her in a public place just to see what she had to say. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a worn-down diner booth, hands wrapped around a cup of cheap coffee. She looked even worse than before, thin, exhausted, completely defeated by life. For the first time, she didn't look entitled. She looked broken. Her last plea. I know I don't deserve your help, she admitted before I could even say anything. I've been horrible to you. I know that. But I have nothing left. No home, no money, no friends. My dad won't even answer my calls. I don't know what to do. I listened, arms crossed, waiting for the inevitable manipulation. But she didn't try to twist the story this time. No excuses, no fake tears, just raw, bitter regret. You were right about everything, she continued, looking down at her coffee. I thought I could take whatever I wanted, that the world owed me something. But now I see that no one owes me anything. She looked up, eyes full of something I never expected, genuine remorse. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I just needed to say, I'm sorry. The choice. For a long moment I said nothing, just watching her, weighing my options. She had done so much damage. Lied, stolen, the Tate. And yet, here she was, completely shattered by her own choices. I could have walked away. Could have left her to deal with the consequences. Instead, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I accept your apology, I said. Her eyes widened in shock. But, I continued, my tone firm, that doesn't mean I trust you. And it sure as hell doesn't mean I'll help you. Her shoulders slumped, but she nodded. I understand. I stood up. If you really want to change, then prove it. Fix your life on your own. Because this time, no one's coming to save you. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just watched as I walked away for the last time. The real end. That was the final chapter of our story. I don't know where she ended up. Maybe she finally learned her lesson. Maybe she didn't. But me? I walked away with my peace intact, knowing that I had won. Not just over her, but over the past. And that was the greatest victory of all. A new beginning. Months passed after that final meeting. Life carried on and I rarely thought about her anymore. One day while walking through the city, I passed a small cafe with a help wanted sign in the window. I wasn't looking for a job, but something else caught my eye. Her. She was behind the counter wearing a faded apron, wiping down tables. She looked different. Not just physically, though she was thinner, her hair tied back messily, but something deeper. She looked humbled. For a moment I debated leaving before she saw me. But before I could move, her eyes met mine. And this time there was no anger, no entitlement, no desperation. Just quiet recognition. A silent understanding. She didn't rush over, didn't try to start a conversation. She just gave a small hesitant nod. And after everything, after all the betrayal, the fights, the stolen belongings, the heartbreak, I nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. Not really. But maybe, just maybe, it was closure. I turned and walked away, knowing I'd never see her again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. The past always echoes. I thought that was the end of it. A silent nod, an unspoken truce, and a final chapter closed. But life has a funny way of bringing the past back when you least expect it. A year later, I was at a networking event for work. It was one of those formal but casual things. People exchanging business cards, shaking hands, trying to impress each other. I was deep in conversation with a potential business partner when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Hey, I know you." I turned slowly, my stomach twisting. It was her. A second chance. Or a trap. She looked better. Not just physically but mentally. Her eyes weren't clouded with entitlement or desperation anymore. She was dressed professionally, holding a tray of drinks, working as a server for the event. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Then she spoke. "I just wanted to say thank you." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For not helping me," she said with a small, ironic smile. "For making me figure things out on my own." That? I hadn't expected. She hesitated, then glanced around before lowering her voice. "I'm in school now, studying business. I'm not perfect and I still have a lot to make up for, but I'm trying." There was a time when I wouldn't have believed her, wouldn't have wanted to believe her. But now, I saw something in her I never had before. Genuine accountability. The final decision. I studied her for a long moment. Then I did something neither of us expected. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my business card and handed it to her. "If you ever need career advice, not money, not favors, just guidance, call me." Her eyes widened. She took the card carefully like it was something precious. "I won't waste this," she said softly. I nodded once. "I hope not." And with that, I walked away knowing I had done the right thing. Not just for her but for myself. The road to redemption. Months passed, and I almost forgot about the moment I handed her my business card. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to hear from her. People say things in the heat of the moment. Promises, gratitude, vows to change, but few actually follow through. Then one evening my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but it's me." Took me a second to place the voice. Then it clicked. "Didn't expect to hear from you," I said honestly. She let out a nervous laugh. "Yeah, I figured. But I actually took your advice. I finished my first semester of business school, and I just got offered an internship. That surprised me." "That's good," I admitted. "Really good. But I have no idea what I'm doing," she admitted. "I don't want to mess this up. You said I could ask for advice, so I'm asking." A choice I never thought I'd make. I could have brushed her off, told her she was on her own. But something in her voice, real uncertainty, real effort, made me pause. Maybe, just maybe, she was serious about turning things around. "All right," I said after a moment. "Let's talk." A new chapter, but not the same story. Over the next few months, she kept in touch. Not often, not in a way that felt intrusive, but enough that I could see she was putting in the work. She asked smart questions about her internship. She wanted to learn, not just coast by. And for the first time, I saw something I never thought I'd see in her. Humility. She wasn't that spoiled, entitled person anymore. She was earning her second chance. The real test. Then came the moment that proved whether she had truly changed. One evening, she called me, her voice tight. "I messed up," she admitted. "I got caught up in a bad situation. Some old habits, some old friends. But I pulled myself out before it went too far." That was the difference. Before, she would have made excuses, played the victim. But now, she owned it. "I just wanted to be honest," she said quietly. "Because I know trust isn't something you just get back. You have to earn it." I didn't respond right away. Then I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, you do." The final lesson. People can change, but only when they decide to. She had lost everything, hit rock bottom, and chose to climb back up. And while I still wasn't sure if I'd ever fully trust her, I knew one thing for certain. She wasn't the same person who had locked me out of my own home. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something. The unfinished bridge. Time passed, and our occasional conversations became less about the past and more about the future. She didn't ask for pity, didn't look for shortcuts. She was working for everything she had now. One day, out of the blue, she texted me. I got a job offer. A real one. Full-time. Benefits and everything. For the first time, I smiled at a message from her. Congrats. You earned it. She didn't respond right away. Then, I wouldn't have if you hadn't pushed me to stand on my own. That hit different. A test of trust. A few weeks later, she reached out again. But this time, she didn't want advice. She wanted something bigger. I know this is a long shot. But would you be willing to meet for coffee? Just once as people. No history, no drama. Just a conversation. I stared at the message, debating. Could I? Should I? It wasn't about holding a grudge anymore. It was about whether I was ready to see her not as the girl who stole from me, but as the person she was trying to become. After a long moment, I typed back. One coffee. That's all. Face to face one last time. We met at a quiet cafe. No tension, no unspoken resentment. Just two people sitting across from each other, sharing a moment that neither of us could have predicted years ago. I don't expect us to be friends, she said after taking a sip of her drink. But I just wanted to thank you properly. For holding me accountable. For not letting me take the easy way out. I nodded. You did the hard part yourself. She hesitated. Would you ever trust me again? That was the real question, wasn't it? I thought about it carefully before answering. Trust isn't something that just comes back overnight. But, you've proven you're not the same person anymore. That means something. She smiled, and for the first time, it didn't feel forced. That's all I needed to hear. The real closure. We finished our coffee, and when we walked out, she turned to me. I don't know if our paths will cross again, but if they do, I hope it'll be as equals. I gave her a small nod. I guess we'll see. And just like that, we went our separate ways. No drama. No bitterness. Just closure. The last chapter. Life moved on, as it always does. Months passed, then a year. We didn't stay in touch, and honestly, I didn't expect to. There was no reason to force a connection. We had both made peace. And that was enough. But fate has a way of bringing things full circle. One evening, I was attending a business conference, networking with professionals in my industry. The event was packed, the air buzzing with conversation and opportunity. That's when I heard a familiar voice. I didn't expect to see you here. I turned around, and there she was. A new person, a new path. She looked different, confident, self-assured, nothing like the lost, entitled person she had once been. Dressed in business attire, holding a portfolio, she blended in with the professionals around us. What are you doing here? I asked. She smiled. I work for a company that's attending the event. I guess we're in the same world now. I studied her for a moment, then nodded. Looks like it. No more what ifs. We talked for a few minutes, catching up. She told me about her job, the work she was doing, how she had finally found stability. It wasn't easy, she admitted. But I built something real for myself. And for the first time, I feel like I belong here. I believed her. As the conversation started winding down, she hesitated. I don't want to take up more of your time. But I just want you to know that I'm grateful. Not just for what you said back then, but for what you didn't say. You never sugarcoated things, and I needed that. I nodded, taking a sip of my drink. You did the hard part yourself. She smiled. Maybe. But sometimes people need someone to tell them the truth, even when they don't want to hear it. For a brief moment, I saw the past flicker between us. The hurt, the anger, the lessons learned. But that was all it was now, the past. Good luck, I said. You too. And with that, we parted ways for the last time. This time as equals. The true ending. Some people leave your life in chaos. Others leave it in peace. She had done both. But in the end, she had proven something rare. That real change is possible, but only if you fight for it. I didn't regret walking away from her back then. But now, I didn't regret seeing her again either. Because sometimes the best closure is knowing that you no longer need it. If this video hurt you, Don't keep it to yourself. Send it to those who will understand.